You're listening to the Finding Truth podcast. When we're not getting distracted by Jacob's plain facts, we discuss taking ownership of our faith and what it looks like to follow Jesus in today's culture. Here are your hosts, Lachie and Brad.
Well, welcome to another episode of the Transformation Trek podcast. Today, we're going to be looking at transformative prayer, which is going to be our new practice. But before we do that, we need to introduce our special host for today, Brad. Who have we got with us?
Well, joining us today is Ralph, all the way from 5 minutes away up the road, right?
Is
that correct?
Ralph?
That's right. Yep, just up the road in Village Church.
Ralph and I actually met for the first time today, so I'm not sure if I'm the right person to introduce him. But
Yeah, when I threw that to you, I thought, but we're there. Yeah. Ralph is, I guess, the co-partner of our youth group here in Burleigh. So we run a youth group together, which is a lot of fun. What do we call Burleigh Youth Collective?
That's right.
Yeah, something like that. And then as we slowly take over the Gold Coast, we're going to call ourselves the Blob and just slowly absorb more.
Everything. Yeah.
But we're not there yet. For now, we're just Burleigh Youth Collective. But Ralph is with us here today as we jump into our new youth practice that we're going to look at for the next month, and that is around the topic of transformative prayer. So I guess off the bat, prayer. What is prayer? What do we think prayer is, and why transformative?
I think it starts with like the baseline is communicating with God. It's talking with God. Like it's where we start. It's what's most important about it, and it's allowing for God to speak to us. And that's probably the transformative part, where God starts to speak back and starts to invade our realities and our world and shape us as a result. So prayer isn't this one-way street. I think the most exciting thing about faith is that it is a two-way street, that we can pour anything we like out to God, but God actually then speaks and responds back to us when we give him the space to do so.
I think for me, I don't know about you guys, but growing up, I always felt like prayer was like a transactional, like just like you'd pray before bed or you'd pray when you got up in the morning. Yeah. And you would, tick, that was done.
Then you should pray to be a good Christian.
Yeah. And that was it. But as I've grown up, or especially over the last few years, I'm more understanding that prayer is something that isn't just something you do in the morning, but it's something that really is a process of inviting Jesus into every part of your life and everything you're doing. And so it's not just, I don't know, when you're at home in the morning, it's when you walk into school or while you're in class or wherever you are. It's actually going, asking the question, how am I inviting Jesus into every aspect of my life? It's not just, it's not just prayer, but it's actually a relationship with Jesus.
It's good. Yeah, I think for me as well, like growing up in church, prayer was the boring parts of the Sunday, right?
Yeah,
it was the times where I was like, okay, I'm just going to put my head down and have a little sleep here. But I think...
Or you do the side-eye, you're like,
yeah.
Has everyone else got their eyes closed? Who's got... And you make eye contact with that guy across the room, you're like,
get our eyes open. Yeah, legit. Still happens to this day sometimes. Yeah. No, but I think for me, like then maturing in my faith, coming out of that understanding now is an idea of like this is the way that we communicate with God and develop that sense of intimacy in relationships. So like I said before, not knowing Ralph from a bar of soap coming in here today, like the more that we get to know each other and talk, the better we know how one another think and feel and character, and that'll inform how I actually respond toward him in terms of things that happen and come up in that journey together. So I think intimacy is cultivated through prayer, and then that then informs our clarity in terms of who we are and who God is through that process.
Yeah. So true. I think if you don't know someone very well, like so much we go, I just don't understand what God's saying to me. I don't understand what he wants from me right now. It's like going up to a stranger or someone who talks a completely other language, like a language you never learned, and expecting to just understand everything the first time you've met them. If you're not actually trying to build a relationship with them, it's going to be like, how can we expect to actually understand what God's saying when he's speaking to us?
Yeah, and I reckon too, it's old school radios and you tune to get the right channel. And sometimes you'd be a little bit off and you'd have a bit of static or have this like weird voice, and then you'd nail it. You're like, oh, I'm on, I can hear the channel. I think that's like with God. We live our lives trying to discern what channel God's on and tune ourselves to that, to a sense of, that's what you're saying, God, and that's how you speak to me. And realizing it's not just an audible voice all the time. In fact, it really is. I think for me, it's a sense of impression, like, I really feel, or an idea that's dropped in, or a picture, or a memory, or a verse, or something that activates and uses my imagination. And I think for a long time I was guilty of my imagination. I felt like it carried me away from prayer. And so praying, but I'm daydreaming about something else. And I think I've realized, no, the daydream is where God wants to speak to me in. And that's actually okay territory to move in, as long as you bring it before God and say, okay, God, like I'm thinking about this idea or this dream or whatever. What do you want to say to me about it, or how is it relevant?
That's good. I think especially with guys as well, for those male listeners today, you don't just sit in front of your friend at a cafe for 20 years of your life and stare lovingly into each other's eye and just speak monologue back and forwards at one another.
Be awkward, wouldn't
it? You go fishing, you do things together, like you go for a walk or whatever. And I think about prayer in the same way as like that relationship I've got with my best mates, where it's usually for me when I'm out doing something that I invite God into that space, those already there to say, hey, like I'm aware of your presence here. And why don't we have a conversation, or why don't we just spend some time together in what I'm already doing or what I enjoy doing with you? So,
So good. So good.
Also, when I used to hear this a bunch when people fall asleep, they're praying at night. So like I have my prayer time at night and they jump into bed and they fall asleep during prayer and they're like, I suck at this prayer thing because I just keep falling asleep. And I think it was Max Lucado said it's actually we fall asleep in the arms of God. There's a sense of like the things that we get guilty hang-ups about in prayer are actually part of prayer because they're part of our lives. God wants to be part of our lives, and it's not like God gets upset if we pull up short or get distracted or move to something else. God's there and continuing to be there as we move through.
So we've called this transformative prayer. Do you want to just highlight some of the ways that transformation can happen in our lives?
Yeah, I think there's probably a variety of things. Sometimes, and we'll probably get to this on the next episode, but when God tells us or speaks to us about a situation that we can actually actively make a difference and change in, I think that's really, really exciting, really transformative. But I think God meets us in all walks of all situations in our life. So when we're feeling maybe really guilty and the last thing we want to do is go to God, that's when we should go to God because he brings that transformation to grace and peace. But also when we're excited about something, to go to God, I'm so stoked for this, or this has happened, it's such good news and thank you and I'm really, really excited. But also when we're lost, I'm not sure what to do or which decision to make. And like teenage years, it's like, who do you date and how does that whole world thing, how do you handle peer pressure and what your other mates are doing that you might be really comfortable with? How do you handle issues that you have with parents or issues with school? And I think that's where prayer becomes transformative, because prayer is the oasis. God is that oasis where we can be safe and say, God, this is who I am fully and I need your wisdom. And we have to be open to the fact that God's going to say stuff sometimes that we don't want to hear, and he's going to call us on stuff that we don't want to hear. But that's the transformation where we go, okay, I'm going to go with it. Like I'm going to risk that, God, you know best than me and I need to change my attitude or shift this, or I'd never seen that idea. I can take that option now, or that's a really smart way to do it. And I think it becomes transformative in every way the more we stoke the fuel of it.
Yeah, it's good. It's really good.
Now, practically speaking, obviously this is going to be a monthly practice. This is something that we want to, I suppose, empower our young people to really focus on over the next month. And so how can we, moving forward, what are some practical ways we can try to implement prayer into our lives? Because I don't know about you guys, but I'm like, all right, I'm going to do better today. And I'm going to pray at least 5 times. And then I go out and I come home and I go, damn, I didn't do it. So what are some ways we can slowly incorporate, or what are some feasible ways that we can actually incorporate prayer into our lives as we sort of look at this and work on it over the next month?
I reckon a key thing is to be okay with your personality. We so often say, okay, you need to pray for the first 15 minutes of a day and that's how you do it. And my personality does not lend me to do that. But I can one day, so on a Monday, go to a coffee shop and part of that becomes prayer. And then Tuesday I can go for a walk and that becomes prayer. And then Wednesday I might go for a surf and that becomes prayer, because I'm so unroutine. Like there's something in me that just hates routine. So if I can spice it up, that I can engage in different spaces, that becomes enormously helpful for me.
Yeah, I think it's asking that question, where do I find God, or where am I best? Because I mean, again, like you more, I am not a morning person. If I'm morning is not the best time for me to be talking to God. Well, maybe it is. Maybe that's what I need. But for me, like living near the beach, I love, or just nature, I love, like that's where I really feel like I find God. And so for me, I love of an afternoon or a morning or whenever I have time in my day, just finding that place. And if that's just going and sitting down at the deck, deck, whatever you call it, at the beach and just being in his presence or whatever it is, I think a good starting place is going, where do I really find that I connect with God?
And perhaps the gateway into that is, where do I most enjoy being?
Yes.
Where do I love being? I'm going to go there.
That's good.
And
so good.
Yeah.
And I think as we wrap this one up to a close, as we journey through all of these practices, I'm sure you guys would agree as well, we're looking at progress in our spiritual lives and in our maturing into being more like Christ rather than perfection.
Yes.
Like that's something that's not ever going to be achieved in this lifetime. And I think as we think about those spaces where we can be with God and where we can pray, or however many times, or the goals that we set, we're looking to just engage a little bit more with God and become a little bit more intimate in that relationship with Him, rather than have a perfect practice at the end of this month.
Totally. I think what the other thing that's helped me just quickly is, I find those weeks or months when you're like, I'm just a bit disconnected. If I can set an alarm that goes off, say 3 times a day, or might go off every hour or whatever, and it's not a blaring alarm, but it causes me to go, okay, God, what do you want to say to me? What do you want me to see, or what do you want me to do? The discipline of bringing that into the regularity really helps. And it doesn't matter if you miss an hour or a week or a day or whatever. What matters is that you're creating more opportunities.
And it helps you, like, I guess, it helps it become a bit of a habit too.
Yeah,
like
totally.
If you set that alarm and it just refocuses you to do that a few times a day. How am I inviting Jesus into my life today? How am I connecting with Him? And over time, it'll just become something you naturally do.
Yeah, totally.
Cool.
Awesome.
Well, that's Transformative Prayer Part 1. We'll jump back in next week and we'll dig a little bit deeper into that. But for now, transformative.
Thanks for having us. It's been great.
Thanks for coming.